Right now, as you're watching this, your hand isn't touching anything. Not the phone, not the table, not even your own face. There's a gap, a void so incomprehensibly vast that if I could show it to you the way I see it, you'd feel like you're floating in outer space even while sitting still. Your body is mostly nothing, not poetically nothing, actually measurably, frighteningly nothing. And once you see what I'm about to show you, you won't be able to unsee it. The solid world. It's the greatest magic trick nature ever pulled. And I'm going to ruin that magic trick for you today. Not to take something away from you, but to give you something back. Something you lost the moment someone told you that you were solid, that you were fixed, that you were a thing made of stuff that couldn't change. That lie, that beautiful, necessary lie your senses tell you every single day, has been weighing you down. And I want to show you what's underneath it, because here's what nobody tells you. Here's what they leave out of the textbooks and the diagrams and all those neat little stories about atoms and molecules. You are not what you think you are. The substance you believe makes up your body, your bones, your beating heart. It's mostly not there. It never was. You've been walking around your whole life thinking you're this dense, solid, permanent thing, and the truth is so much stranger and so much more beautiful than that. You're walking around thinking you understand what's real. I mean, why wouldn't you? You can see your hands. You can feel the chair beneath you. You can knock on wood and hear the sound of something solid meeting something else solid. Every single sense you have tells you the same story. Matter is real. Matter is dense. Matter is here. But that feeling, that absolute certainty you have about the solidity of the world, is a lie your senses tell you to keep you functional. And that lie is making you heavy. Here's the pain, and I want you to really feel this for a second. You think you're stuck. Stuck in your body, stuck in your patterns, stuck in your story. You believe matter is permanent, dense, unchangeable. You look in the mirror and you see something fixed, something that is what it is and can't be anything else. And if you're matter, if you're made of stuff, if you're this solid thing, then maybe you are too. Maybe you're stuck. Maybe you can't change. Maybe the weight you carry, the patterns you repeat, the person you've become, maybe that's just what you are now. Permanent, dense, real. This video is going to crack that open, because once you see that you're 99.999999% empty space, that your atoms are mostly void held together by invisible forces, you'll realize something that's going to change how you walk through the world. You were never solid to begin with. You're not a fixed thing. You're a temporary pattern, a process, a dance of energy that thinks it's a noun. And here's the unique insight, the thing that makes this different from every other video about quantum physics or atoms or the nature of reality. Most people use this information to feel small. They hear that they're mostly empty space and they think, oh great, I'm nothing, I'm meaningless, I'm just a cosmic accident floating in a void. But I'm going to show you something else. I'm going to show you how the emptiness makes you free. The nothing isn't nihilism. It's possibility. You're not trapped in matter. You're made of space, probability, and force. And that changes everything about what you think you can become. So let me take you somewhere. Let me show you something that, when I first really understood it, not just knew the equations but felt it, it made me sit down and stare at my own hands like I was looking at them for the first time. Imagine I hand you a marble. It's small, solid, fits in your palm. Got it? Good. Now imagine I tell you, that marble, that's the nucleus of an atom. That's the center, the dense part, the part that has almost all the mass. You're holding it, you can feel its weight, you can see its size. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to really think about your answer. Where are the electrons? You've seen those pictures, right? The ones they show you in school, the ones with the neat little orbits, electrons circling the nucleus like tiny planets around a tiny sun. Those pictures are garbage. They're worse than garbage. They're lies that feel true. The electrons aren't close to the nucleus. They're not circling nearby. Let me tell you where they actually are. Take that marble, that nucleus, and put it right in the center of a football stadium. Put it on the 50-yard line. Now, where are the electrons? They're not on the field. They're not in the stands. They're out in the parking lot. They might be farther than that. If you tried to map an atom to scale, if you tried to show where things actually are in relation to each other, you'd run out of paper before you ran out of emptiness. Think about that for a second. Really think about it. The nucleus is the marble. Everything else, the entire volume of the atom, the thing that makes up the space that makes up your body, is empty. It's a stadium with a marble in the middle, and somehow that stadium is pretending to be solid. How? How is that possible? The electrons are moving. They're moving so fast, creating this blur, this cloud of probability, and that blur is what gives the atom its apparent size. It's like when you spin a rope in a circle over your head. The rope creates the illusion of a solid disk because it's moving so fast your eyes can't track it. But it's not solid. It's one rope moving through space. The atom is the same way. It's not a thing. It's a process pretending to be a thing. And you are made of trillions upon trillions of these stadiums, each one mostly empty, each one held together not by stuff but by forces, by fields, by invisible pushes and pulls that make the marble stay in the center and keep the electrons from flying off into space. You're not solid. You're a collection of force fields arranged in a pattern that your brain interprets as a body. You know what blows my mind about this? What really gets me? The illusion works so well that you've built cities on top of it. You've made love, written symphonies, cried at funerals, laughed until your stomach hurt. All of it happening inside these temporary arrangements of mostly nothing. And the nothing doesn't collapse. It holds. Why? Because the forces are real, even if the stuff isn't. So here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. If the forces are the real thing holding you together, if it's not the marble but the fields, not the particles but the relationships between them, what happens when you stop identifying with the marble and start identifying with the field? What happens when you realize you're not the stuff but the pattern, not the matter but the music? Let me tell you about a moment I had once. I was sitting at a wooden table, just a normal table, nothing special about it. I'd been thinking about this stuff too long, probably. You know how sometimes you think about a word so much it stops sounding like a word and just becomes noise? It was like that, but with reality. I looked down at my hands resting on the surface of the table, and I tried to feel what was actually happening. Not what my senses told me was happening, but what I knew from physics was actually going on. And for just a second, just this brief, strange moment, I couldn't feel the table anymore. Not because my nerves failed, not because something went wrong with my body, but because I understood what was actually happening. My hand's electrons were repelling the table's electrons. We weren't making contact. There was no touch happening. Just two clouds of probability, two force fields, pushing against each other across a void. My hand was hovering over the table, separated by a gap so small I couldn't measure it, but so real I couldn't deny it. I felt like a ghost trying to haunt a world that wasn't even there. And it scared me. I'm not going to lie to you and say it was immediately liberating or beautiful. It scared me, because for that moment, I felt how thin the story was, how fragile the narrative of solidity really is. I felt like I might fall through the table, through the floor, through the earth itself, because none of it was actually there. But then something shifted. Because if nothing's actually touching, if everything's mostly space, if the prison I thought I was in, the body, the patterns, the fixed sense of self, never had walls to begin with, then what exactly was holding me back? What was I afraid of? What was I protecting? If I'm mostly nothing, if the boundaries between me and everything else are just force fields playing pretend, then where does me end and not me begin? And that's when it freed me. Not all at once. not in some dramatic flash of enlightenment, but slowly, like ice melting, like a fist unclenching. The emptiness wasn't the problem. The emptiness was the solution. The space inside me, the void between my atoms, the nothing that made up most of my body. That was the only reason I could move at all. That was the only reason I could change. What if the emptiness isn't the problem? What if it's the only reason you can move at all? What if the weight you're carrying isn't real weight, but just the story you're telling yourself about solidity, about permanence, about being stuck? Let me explain something to you about solidity. Something they don't tell you, because it's too weird, because it ruins the simple story. You think matter is hard. You think when you punch a wall and it hurts, you're feeling the hardness of the wall, the density of it, the stuff of it pushing back against the stuff of your hand. But that's not what's happening. Not even close. Hardness, the sensation you call hardness, is electromagnetic repulsion between electron clouds happening faster than your nerves can process. When you punch a wall and it hurts, you're not feeling matter resisting matter. You're feeling force fields refusing to overlap. The wall doesn't stop you because it's solid. The wall stops you because it's electrons, and your electrons are having a shoving match at the quantum level, and neither side is willing to give up space. It's like two magnets with the same poles facing each other. Push them together, and they resist. Not because there's something hard between them, but because the fields are pushing back. That's what solidity is. It's not a property of matter. It's an emergent property, a story your brain tells you to simplify the chaos of electromagnetic forces interacting in ways too complex and too fast for you to consciously process. Solidity is a collaboration, not a fact. It's an agreement between fields. It's a dance that looks like stillness. And once you see that, once you really understand that nothing is as stuck as it appears, something loosens inside you. Because what feels immovable is just energy in a standoff. And standoffs can change. Energy can be redirected. Patterns can shift. I want you to think about your body right now. The body you're inhabiting as you watch this. The body you think of as you. How old are you? 20, 40, 60? Doesn't matter. Because the atoms in your body right now, most of them weren't there 7 years ago. You've been rebuilt. Cell by cell, meal by meal, breath by breath. The calcium in your bones came from something you ate. The water in your blood came from something you drank. The carbon in your DNA came from the air, from plants, from animals, from the long chain of life and death and recycling that's been going on for billions of years. The you that exists isn't a fixed object. It's a pattern that persists. Think about a wave in the ocean. You see it rolling toward the shore, and you think of it as a thing, the wave, that specific wave. But the wave isn't made of specific water molecules. The molecules aren't traveling with the wave. They're just moving up and down as the wave passes through them. The wave is a pattern, a shape that the water makes for a moment before the pattern moves on and different water takes its place. You're the same. You're a wave. Your consciousness, your memories, your sense of self, your personality, none of it requires the same atoms to stick around. The atoms are just passing through. You're not matter pretending to be alive. You're aliveness pretending to be matter. The pattern is what's real. The stuff is just borrowed. You're renting it. And when you die, you'll give it back. And the atoms will go on to be part of something else, some other pattern, some other temporary arrangement. Does that scare you? It shouldn't. It should free you, because if you're a pattern and not a thing, then the thing you're afraid of losing, the solid, permanent you, never existed in the first place. What exists is the process, the flow, the continuous becoming, and that can't be taken from you because it's not a possession, it's what you are. Here's something else, something paradoxical. Something that's going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but I'm not. If atoms were solid, if there was no space, if it was just stuff packed tight with no room between, you'd be locked in place forever. No motion, no growth, no transformation. You'd be frozen, unchangeable, exactly what you are and nothing else. The void inside you is what makes change possible. Think about it. Motion requires space to move into. Growth requires room to expand. Transformation requires the ability to rearrange, to shuffle, to let go of one configuration and adopt another. And none of that can happen without emptiness, without the gaps, without the nothing that gives the something room to dance. People think emptiness means lack. They hear, "You're mostly empty space," and they think less. They think insufficient. They think broken or hollow or missing something essential. But in physics, in the actual mathematics and reality of how things work, emptiness is potential. It's not the absence of something. It's the presence of possibility. It's the gap that allows movement. It's the silence that allows sound. It's the space between thoughts that allows a new idea to emerge. When you feel empty, and I mean really empty, not just hungry or bored, but that existential emptiness that sometimes comes in the quiet moments, you're not broken. You're in the most flexible state you can be in. You're open. You're undefined. You're a blank page, a fresh canvas, a quantum system that hasn't collapsed into a definite state yet. The nothing is where the next version of you gets to start. But here's the paradox. Here's the thing that'll mess you up if you think about it too long. You're mostly nothing, and yet you're the most real thing you've ever known. How does that work? How can both be true? How can you be almost entirely empty space and also be the center of your entire experiential universe, the one thing you can never doubt, the I that thinks therefore is? The answer is going to sound simple, but it's not. It's profound in its simplicity. Reality isn't about what you're made of. It's about what you do. It's not the material. It's the pattern, the process, the relationships. Think about a song. Is a song real? Of course it is. You can hear it. You can remember it. It can make you cry or make you dance or bring back a memory so vivid you can almost smell the room you were in when you first heard it. But what is the song made of? Air molecules vibrating in patterns. That's it. The air itself isn't the song. The molecules aren't the song. The song is the pattern they make as they move. And when the song ends, the molecules don't disappear. They're still there, still air, but the song is gone. The pattern has ended. You're a song. You're a pattern of energy and force and probability moving through space and time. The matter, the atoms, the molecules, the stuff, is just the medium. It's the air that carries the music, but it's not the music itself. And when the song of you ends, when the pattern dissolves, the matter goes back to being just matter. But the song was real while it played. The song mattered. The song changed things. The song was heard. Love isn't real because of the neurons firing. It's real because of what it makes you feel and choose and become. A thought isn't real because of the electrical signals in your brain. It's real because of what it means, what it points to, what it makes possible. You're not important because you're solid. You're important because you're organized emptiness that became aware of itself. You're a temporary whirlpool in the river of atoms. The water flows through you, but you're not the water. You're the spiral, the pattern, the shape that holds for a while and then lets go. And while you hold, you're as real as anything has ever been. More real, maybe, because you know you're real. Because you're not just a pattern. You're a pattern that observes itself, reflects on itself, wonders about itself. That's the miracle. Not that you're made of something, but that nothing became something long enough to ask what it is. So if you're a pattern and not a thing, what does that mean for the parts of you that you thought were permanent? What does that mean for the person you've been, the mistakes you've made, the ways you've hurt or been hurt, the stories you tell about who you are? If the atoms aren't permanent, if even the cells aren't the same ones you had a decade ago, then who exactly is carrying all that history? Who is that person you think you are? The answer is, you are. But not because you're a thing that persists, because you're a pattern that remembers. Memory is part of the pattern. The structure encodes the history. The way the neurons connect, the associations they've formed, the pathways that have been strengthened or weakened, that's where the story lives. Not in the atoms themselves, but in their arrangement, in their relationships, in the way they're organized. And here's what that means, practically speaking. Here's where this stops being abstract philosophy and starts being something you can use. If the pattern can change, if the arrangement isn't fixed, if the atoms are constantly being replaced, and the structure is constantly being maintained or modified by the processes of life, then you can change. Not hypothetically, actually. Not by becoming a different person, but by letting the pattern shift, by letting new connections form, by allowing old pathways to weaken, by feeding the pattern different information, different experiences, different inputs that nudge the organization in a new direction. You're not carved in stone. You're not a statue. You're a river that thinks it's a statue because it's been flowing in the same channel for so long it forgot it was water. But you are water. You are flow. You are process. And water can find new paths. Rivers can change course. The canyon wasn't always there. The water carved it. And if you don't like the canyon you're in, you can start carving a new one. It's slow. It takes time. But it's possible because you're not solid. You never were. Let me give you something practical now. Something you can do with this information. Something that'll help you feel the truth of it in your body, not just understand it in your head. Find a place where you can sit quietly for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be perfectly silent or perfectly still. Just somewhere you can close your eyes without anyone bothering you. Got it? Good. Now close your eyes and I want you to try something strange. Try to feel the space inside your body, not your organs, not your bones, not the tissues or the fluids, the space, the gaps, the emptiness between the atoms. I know it sounds impossible. I know your senses aren't built to detect that level of scale. But stay with me. Imagine zooming in. Imagine your awareness shrinking down, getting smaller and smaller until you can see the cells. Then smaller still until you see the molecules. Then smaller until you see the atoms. And then you see what I've been telling you. You see the stadium with the marble in the center. You see the vast, empty spaces between the nucleus and the electrons. You see that what felt solid, what your whole life has felt solid, is mostly void. Let that image dissolve the heaviness you carry. You don't have to hold yourself together so tightly. The forces are already doing that. The electromagnetic fields, the quantum mechanical rules, the fundamental interactions, they're keeping your pattern stable. You don't have to clench. You don't have to grip. You're not going to fall apart. The universe is holding you together at a level so deep, so fundamental, you couldn't let go if you tried. Breathe into the emptiness. Feel how light you could be if you stopped pretending to be dense. Feel the space. Feel the possibility. Feel the nothing that makes up most of you, and let it make you lighter. Not physically. You're not going to levitate or anything, but emotionally, psychologically. That weight you carry, that sense of being burdened by your own existence, it's not the weight of matter. It's the weight of the story you're telling about the matter, and stories can change. Open your eyes when you're ready. But remember that feeling, that lightness, that sense of space inside you. Because it's always there. You just forget it. You get caught up in the sensory illusion of solidity, and you forget that underneath the illusion, you're mostly nothing. And the nothing is your friend. The nothing is your freedom. Here's another thing you can try. It's simple, but it's powerful if you really pay attention. Touch something. Right now. Put your hand on a table, a wall, your own leg. Feel the contact. Feel the solidity of it. Now I want you to shift your awareness. Stop feeling the contact and start feeling the repulsion. Feel the force field. Feel the invisible push that's keeping your hand from passing through the table. Because that's what's actually happening. Your electrons are pushing against the table's electrons. They're refusing to overlap. They're maintaining the boundary. And that boundary, that electromagnetic force that creates the sensation of touch, is what's real. Not the stuff, the field. It sounds cold when I say it like that. It sounds like I'm trying to make the world mechanical, sterile, lifeless. But I'm not. I'm trying to show you something beautiful. The universe is protecting your shape. It's maintaining your distinctness. It's keeping you separate from everything else, not because you're isolated, not because you're alone, but because that separateness is what lets you interact. That gap is what makes relationship possible. You're always almost touching everything. You're held at the perfect distance to feel without dissolving. That's intimacy. That's connection. Not merger, closeness across a void. You remain you. The other remains other. And in that space between, in that gap that never quite closes, there's contact. There's relationship. There's love. Think about that next time you hold someone's hand. You're not actually touching them. You never have. You never will. There's always a gap, always that last tiny distance that the electromagnetic force maintains. And yet, you feel them. You feel the warmth of their hand. You feel the pressure of their grip. You feel connected. Not despite the gap, but because of it. The gap is what makes the feeling possible. Without it, you'd merge into an undifferentiated blob. You'd lose yourself. You'd lose them. The space between you is what lets there be a you and a them in the first place. So when you touch the table, when you touch another person, when you touch your own face and feel the impossible strangeness of being a thing that can touch itself, remember the gap. Remember the void. Remember that you're experiencing force, not matter. And let that make you gentle. Let it make you grateful. Let it make you aware of how delicate this whole thing is, how improbable, how beautiful. Here's one more practice. This one's for when you feel stuck, when you feel trapped by your body, your habits, your circumstances, when the weight of being feels unbearable. I want you to pause, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and say this out loud. I am 99.9999999% empty space. Say it. Mean it. Let it sink in. Really feel what those words are pointing to. You're not a boulder. You're not a block of granite. You're not some dense, immovable thing. You're a cloud pretending to be solid. You're a mist that thinks it's a mountain. You're a pattern of forces held in a temporary arrangement that your brain interprets as a body. And clouds can shift, they can move, they can change shape, they can disperse and reform. The pattern you're in right now, the one that feels so fixed, so permanent, so inescapable, is held together by forces, yes? But forces can be redirected. Forces respond to other forces. You're not carved in stone, you're written in energy, and energy moves. When you feel stuck in your body, remember, the body is mostly space. When you feel stuck in your patterns, remember, patterns are made of relationships, and relationships can change. When you feel stuck in your story, remember, stories are made of neurons firing in sequences, and neurons can form new connections. Nothing about you is as solid as it seems, and that's not a tragedy. That's your way out. The prison you think you're in, look closer. The bars are made of nothing. The walls are made of force fields. And force fields are just mathematics, just probability, just energy playing by rules that can be understood and worked with, and, in some cases, transcended. You're not trapped. You never were. You've been free this whole time, thinking you were in a cage because the space around you felt solid. But now you know. Now you've seen through the magic trick. The solid world is just empty space pretending, just forces collaborating to create the illusion of substance, and if the world is mostly nothing, and you're mostly nothing, then the boundaries you thought were absolute are actually negotiable. The limits you thought were real are actually suggestions. The person you thought you were stuck being is actually just one configuration of an endlessly reconfigurable pattern. So here's where we've been. Let me bring this home for you, because I know I've taken you on a strange journey, And I want to make sure you come back with something you can hold on to, something you can use, something that'll matter tomorrow when you wake up and the world feels solid again. You started this video thinking you were solid. You thought matter was real and emptiness was absence. You thought the ground beneath your feet, the chair beneath you, the body you inhabit. You thought all of it was substantial, dense, permanent. You thought you were a thing, and things don't change easily. Things are what they are. But now you know. Now you've seen it. You're mostly nothing. The space inside you is vast, silent, full of potential. The you that feels so permanent, so fixed, so undeniably real. It's a pattern, a process, a song the universe is singing through borrowed atoms that'll be gone and replaced in a few years anyway. You're not a thing. You're a happening. You're not a noun. You're a verb pretending to be a noun because verbs are scary and nouns feel safe. And somehow, that doesn't make you less real. That doesn't make you meaningless or insignificant or small. It makes you more free. It makes you lighter. It makes you possible in ways you weren't possible when you thought you were solid. Because if you're not a fixed thing, you can't be a broken thing. If you're a temporary arrangement of energy and space, then the story you've been telling yourself about who you are, the one that feels so heavy, so limiting, so inescapable, is just one version of the pattern. It can change. It can dissolve and reform. The emptiness isn't a tragedy. It's the reason you're not stuck. The void inside you, that 99.9% of you that's just space, isn't lack. It's not absence. It's not the part of you that's missing something. It's possibility. It's potential. It's the room you have to become something else, to grow, to transform, to let the pattern shift into new configurations. The nothing is what makes the something flexible. The emptiness is what makes the fullness possible. You've been walking around your whole life thinking you needed to be more solid, more substantial, more permanently yourself. You've been trying to hold it all together, to maintain your shape, to keep the boundaries clear and the edges sharp. But you don't have to do that. The universe is already doing it for you, at a level so fundamental, so deep, so automatic that you couldn't stop it if you tried. The forces are holding your pattern stable. Your job isn't to be solid. Your job is to be alive. And being alive means moving, changing, flowing, letting the pattern evolve. It means feeding yourself new experiences, new information, new relationships that nudge the organization in directions you couldn't have predicted. It means allowing old connections to weaken when they're not serving you anymore. It means having the courage to let parts of the pattern dissolve so new parts can form. You're not betraying yourself when you change. You're not losing yourself. You're being yourself. Because yourself is not a fixed point. It's a trajectory. It's a direction. It's a process of becoming that never stops, that never settles, that never reaches some final permanent state. You're always in motion, always rearranging, always becoming the next version of you. And the emptiness, the vast, silent spaces between your atoms, that's what gives you the room to do it. Here's your mantra. I want you to say this with me. Say it out loud if you can. Say it quietly if you have to, but say it and mean it, and let it change something in you. I am not solid. I am space that learned to feel. I am not broken. I've just been misled. The void inside me is not lack. It's possibility. I am not my matter. I am the pattern, the process, the song. And songs can change. Say it again. I am not solid. I am space that learned to feel. I am not broken. I've just been misled. The void inside me is not lack. It's possibility. I am not my matter. I am the pattern, the process, the song. And songs can change. Feel that. Feel how different it is to think of yourself as space instead of stuff. Feel how much lighter it is to be a process instead of a thing. Feel how much freedom there is in knowing you're not broken, just temporarily organized in a way that's not working for you anymore. And that can change. You can change. Not by force, not by willpower, not by gritting your teeth and trying to be someone else, but by understanding what you actually are and working with that instead of against it. You're a pattern of energy in space. You're a temporary arrangement. You're a wave passing through the ocean of atoms. And waves don't stay the same shape. They can't. They respond to the medium they're moving through. They adapt. They change. They remain waves, but the form shifts. That's not failure. That's not loss. That's what waves do. Look, I don't need you to believe me. I'm not asking for faith. I'm not asking you to take this on authority. I'm asking you to test it. Go touch something and feel the gap. Go sit with the emptiness inside you and see if it feels like death or like freedom. Go live for a while knowing you're mostly nothing, and notice if it makes you heavier or lighter. Notice if it makes you more afraid or less. Notice if it makes you hold on tighter or let go more easily. The truth of what you are isn't something I can give you. It's something you have to feel for yourself. But I can point you toward it. I can show you where to look. I can tell you what I found when I looked there myself. And what I found was space. Vast, silent, beautiful space. And in that space, the possibility of being anything at all. You're made of nothing. And that's the most beautiful, the most liberating, the most profoundly true thing I've ever tried to tell anyone. The nothing is what makes you free. The emptiness is what gives you room to breathe, to move, to change, to become. You're not trapped in matter. You're dancing through it. You're not defined by substance. You're defined by pattern, by process, by the way energy moves through the void and creates something that feels like a self. And that self, that temporary, improbable, beautiful pattern, that's you. Not you as a thing, but you as a happening. You as a process. You as the universe becoming aware of itself for a little while before the pattern dissolves and the atoms go on to make something else. You're a song, and while the song is playing, it's real. It matters. It changes things. It's heard. So play your song. Change your song. Let the pattern shift. Feed it new inputs. Let old pathways weaken. Form new connections. You're not betraying the person you were. You're becoming the person you are. And the person you are is not a fixed point. It's a trajectory. It's a direction. It's a process of becoming that never ends until the song stops playing. And when it does stop, when the pattern finally dissolves, when the atoms that borrowed your shape drift apart to become parts of other patterns, other songs, you won't disappear. Not completely. Because patterns leave traces. Songs echo. The connections you formed, the impacts you had, the love you shared, the ideas you contributed, those ripple out. Those change other patterns. Those become part of the larger song that the universe is singing, the one that's been playing since the beginning and will keep playing long after you're gone. You're not separate from that. You're part of it. You've always been part of it. The boundaries between you and everything else, they're not as clear as you think. The atoms that make up your body right now were once parts of stars, plants, animals, other people, and when you're done with them, they'll go on to be parts of other stars, plants, animals, people. You're borrowing them. You're renting space in the universe for a little while, and the rent is paid not in money or effort, but in the simple act of being, of experiencing, of letting the pattern play itself out. So don't hold so tight. Don't clench so hard. Don't try to be more solid than you are. You're mostly space, and that's perfect. That's exactly what you need to be. The emptiness is your superpower. The void is your freedom. The nothing is what gives the something meaning. You're made of nothing, and that's everything you need to be. If this shifted something, if you felt the ground disappear under your feet in a good way, if you felt lighter, if you felt the prison walls dissolve even for just a moment, leave a comment. Tell me what you felt. Tell me what changed. Tell me if the emptiness scared you or freed you. I want to know. Not because I need the validation, but because these conversations matter. Because when you share what you're experiencing, you're helping other people see that they're not alone in feeling the strangeness of existence, the weight of being, the confusion of trying to understand what the hell we are. And if you want more of this, if you want me to keep taking the universe apart and putting it back together in ways that make you feel something, in ways that shift your perspective, in ways that remind you you're not as stuck as you think, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel, not because I need the numbers, not because I'm trying to build an empire, but because maybe you need reminders. Maybe you need someone to keep pointing you back toward the truth of what you are when the world tries to convince you you're solid, when the weight gets heavy again, when you forget that you're made of space and possibility, and that nothing about you is as permanent as it feels. I'll keep making these if you keep watching. I'll keep trying to show you the strangeness and the beauty of the universe, the way it actually works underneath the stories we tell ourselves. Because the universe is so much weirder and so much more wonderful than anyone told you. And you deserve to know. You deserve to see it clearly. You deserve to feel the freedom that comes from understanding what you actually are. You're not broken. You've just been misled. You're not stuck. You've just been pretending to be solid. You're not limited. You've just been living inside a story about limitation. And stories can change. Patterns can shift. Songs can evolve. You're made of nothing. And that's the most beautiful thing I've ever tried to tell you.